Friday, I just wanted to talk about the raw food diet and living a raw fruit lifestyle and living on fruits and vegetables in its raw state. Something I've been doing for a long time now. And there are a lot of people out there, or some people out there, that claim that they're raw foodist and they're raw vegan. And the majority of them are not eating all raw. And if you're not eating all raw, I would say you're somebody who's living on a diet with a lot of raw fruits and vegetables in your diet. I wouldn't necessarily label myself as a raw foodist if I wasn't eating all raw food. It's like if you're eating some meat, I wouldn't say you're a vegan. You're eating some meat. There are, without thinking about it, some things that might get in. Like you might eat something cooked where you don't know you're eating it, or if you eat something that's an animal you don't know, well then yes, you can consciously label yourself as what you think you're doing. But when you knowingly know you're eating cooked food or knowingly know you're eating animal food, don't label yourself raw. Don't label yourself vegan. If you knowingly know you're doing something, don't try to start to play with the percentages and say, well, I'm only doing this percent or that percent, so it's okay. Come to reality of what you're doing. Now, the question I often ask people is the raw food diet for everyone? And some people say, well, all our bodies are built different and certain people need certain things. Certain people need certain things based on how much they messed it up in the past. But our bodies are pretty much built the same way, maybe not to the same quality, but we were designed to be frutivore animals, to eat fruits and vegetables. The Bible says, our Creator says, the fruit is for our food, and the green herbs are for our medicine, for our healing. So that's for everyone. Now, as we start adding things in our diet besides the fruits and vegetables, then we have to think about how they're affecting our bodies or how they have affected us over the lifespan. Now, Joel Furman, who I interview often, says cancer and all these other diseases, are really determined by what you were doing growing up, or even what your parents did. When you were in the womb, if they smoked, chances are that you're going to suffer from certain diseases where if they didn't smoke. So the health of your parents when you were in the womb, or your mother when you were in the womb, going down to what you did as a little child, that has an effect in our bodies. So the question isn't really, is raw vegan the best for us? The question is how much do we mess up our bodies and get away from eating raw vegan? Now, when we come to the terms of cooking our food, some foods are better cooked from a standpoint of, if you're dealing with a digestive disorder where your body can't take the roughage of a whole raw food, like even leafy greens or something. So steaming them or cooking them might help. In times of, if you're living in extreme cold temperature, having a soup or some tea or something might be better for that particular situation. If you take the ideal situation where somebody's living in the tropics like I am, there's not much benefit to having cooked food in your diet. There's not much benefit to, eating anything less than 100% raw. However, from a social standpoint, yes, eating cooked food, eating grains. From a social standpoint, it's going to be a lot easier if you include cooked potatoes, bread, and starches, cooked starches, and pasta, and these things in your diet. However, from a nutritional, health building, disease preventing, and curing standpoint, the raw foods, the raw vegan food diet is going to put you in the best situation to heal the fastest, to get the benefits of getting the nutrition in your body while getting the healing effects that the body was designed to do. You see, the way it works is the body is its own self-healing organism and was designed to heal every night when we're sleeping. Cleansing and healing. That's it. Those are the two things the body was made to do. It's a self-cleansing system. We just have to keep it clean and not overwork it and give it what it needs to do its job. Keeping it clean. You want to avoid all the extra toxins that people are putting in their food, the all the chemicals that come from unorganic food, and just you want to make sure you're doing your best to live where the environment and the air is clean. You want to do your best to keep your system clean, but also not putting too much in, because there's nothing that creates more waste or dirt, or however you want to call it, than overeating. Eating more than our body needs, because that excess food turns to waste. And if your body is working correctly, it's going to get rid of that waste. However, if your internal plumbing's messed up, that waste is going to stay in the body, and it's going to make your body filthy. That's the number one cause of disease. It's overeating, and your body's not working well enough to get rid of what you've overeaten, and it now becomes waste in the body. They say you are what you eat. I say not what you eat, you're what that, how clean you are. That's what it comes down to. And if your body is filthy from waste that has not been eliminated, this creates the biggest environment for diseases. So we want to get our digestion working properly. And to do that, we want to eat the foods that have the fiber in it. We want to eat the fruits and the vegetables in its raw state as the majority of our diet. Really, the only processing we should be doing to food from a health standpoint is really maybe fermenting some sauerkraut or fermenting some vegetables, which will help it digest even better and help cleanse the body even better. But once we start cooking our food, you can get away with it. But just because you get away with it doesn't mean it's ideal for your body. But certainly, if you're in those situations where I said if you have a digestive disorder and you need softer foods, or if you're in a colder environment, they might be ideal for that particular time in your situation. However, it depends. If you want to put yourself in the ideal situation you could be in, and then eat the ideal diet you can eat. Socially, that's another story. Like I was saying, not everyone's willing or can do it. And you don't have to do it. I mean, you can certainly live a long life eating cooked vegetarian foods and be fine. When you start eating the meat and the animals and killing things, it's a whole nother story, because not only are you putting waste in your body, having waste remaining after, because the body can't get rid of it without that fiber, but on every level, including a spiritual level, you're partaking in death and consuming death. And there's nothing good about that. So I would say the ideal diet for most people, depending where they live and depending on their previous health, would be a diet that has the most raw fruits and vegetables in it. Even with that, you want to be careful to have a good variety of foods, have a good amount of green vegetables and leafy greens, and the fruit you are eating, you want to make sure, to your best knowledge, that it was picked ripe on the tree and it hasn't been sprayed with pesticides and things like this. And if you're going to start getting into cooked food, be careful with the starches, be careful with the breads and the potatoes and things like this, because these are the things people have a tendency to overconsume. You can overconsume anything, but it's a lot easier to overeat on bread and potatoes than it is on fruit. Because even if you're overeating on fruit, it's going to digest much quicker and better than bread and potatoes. So if you are going to include starches in your diet, grains, bread, potatoes, and these things, you got to watch the amounts you're eating. And I definitely recommend following food combining. You want to put yourself in that situation. Another common thing, another mistake is when people are eating a raw vegan diet, they tend to overeat on the fats. And when you're overeating on the fats, again, it'll mess with your digestion and all of your health. So even though you're doing raw vegan, if you're just eating, coconut and, and nuts all day, it's not ideal. What I've learned is it's best to soak the nuts before consuming them, because if you get them right off a tree, they're kind of wet already and softer, but they're dried. It's a dried food. From my experience, I've learned that, we call ourselves raw foodists or raw vegans, but when you process the food in any way except through fermentation, but even through fermentation, because some people ferment drinks and make them alcoholic beverages, but from a food standpoint, they call it pickling vegetables and things like this, or making a kimchi or making a sauerkraut. That's in essence, you're processing the food, but that's not in a bad way. That could be in a good way. But once you start not eating the foods in this whole form, and definitely when you blend up the foods, or when you dehydrate the foods, especially the dehydrating of the foods, you're taking the one of the most important elements of the food out of the food, and that would be the liquid. It's a common thing that people use as a step to get from cooked food to raw, is to use dehydrated food as that feeling that cooked food gives you, but you're not cooking your food. Well, you are dehydrating your food, and that's the one of the major problems with cooking is you're dehydrating it. If you eat dehydrated food, your body's going to be dehydrated. When I meet people that eat a fruitarian-based diet, they're getting a lot of their food from the juices that are the liquid that's in the fruits. But when you start switching to a high-fat diet with a lot of nuts or a lot of fruits or vegetables that do not have a lot of juice in them, you're creating the beginning of this need for the liquid that you're missing in the diet. So I would definitely recommend, if you are raw vegan or thinking about raw vegan, be careful with the amount of dehydrated food you're eating. Be careful with the amount of nuts you're eating. I think it's better to soak the nuts before consuming them. But even then, it should be a small part of your diet. And the majority of your diet being the leafy greens and the fruits. So you could say celery and leafy greens and fruits. That's the ideal. If you're not in the ideal situation, you got to make some adjustments, possibly, but consider those things. And if you are going to eat starches, do your best not to overconsume them. All right? I know this works, folks. I know this works. And I have to pick my own fruit. I get to sprout my food. That's another thing I didn't mention. For me, the biggest part of the diet has been sprouts and microgreens. No matter where you live in this world, you can grow microgreens and grow sprouts. You don't need a lot of money to eat a raw food diet. Microgreens, sprouts, and fruit. The microgreens are leafy greens. It's not practical to grow spinach and leafy greens in most places because you don't have the space, or they might not grow in your environment, but you can grow microgreens like sunflower sprouts and pea sprouts right in your house, which I do. So you can order fruit in the mail. I have some people that have websites where you can order fruit in the mail. I'll put those links below. That is picked properly, so it doesn't taste anything like the store-bought fruit, which is just terrible. And then the microgreens, which you can grow in your own house. That's the answer. That's the way to go. Whether you have a disease or not, the microgreens and the store-bought fruit. Now, consider those things. Now, if you're in a certain situation where you've already overdone it and you're suffering from something like cancer. Now, the sugar in fruit is excellent for the body, but no matter what type of sugar it is, the cancer will feed off of that. So in certain situations, for a certain cleansing time and healing time, you might need to avoid the high sugar fruits if you're healing from something like cancer. But that's for somebody that's gotten themselves in that situation. And in that situation, I'd recommend more of a Hippocrates Health Institute style diet, which is mostly sprouts, greens, and the low sugar fruits, if any at all. But for the average person that's not suffering from cancer, the sprouts, the microgreens, and the fruit. Getting enough calories, getting enough protein, being strong enough to eat this way and live this way. 30 years I've been doing this, and I monitored my blood work over the years and made the proper adjustments, but I feel I'm doing okay. And each person has to try and do what they see working for them. Experiment, learn, and do what works best for you. You don't have to agree with me. Whether you agree or disagree, whatever your goals are, make sure you're reaching them. Okay? If it's working for you, whatever you're doing, great. If it's not, consider the things that I'm saying here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Put your questions below. Have a great day and keep growing.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the raw